guess with startup funding,
Mm-hmm.
with startups, this year is going to be a very difficult year for VC funding.
Absolutely.
I think in general, you can debate whether we are and aren't in a recession all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I view it as people are in a recession, right? Like everyday people have been in a recession the entire year.
Exactly. Everybody's getting squeezed. Things just cost more.
Yeah.
And I think that's so it's kind of taking the recession question and then tying it back. I'm going to try to tie it back to VC. I'm going to try to kind of model it back, but we'll see how I get on with this. But thinking overall, I do think that we're in a recession mainly because this has been we're due for a recession mainly because this has been the most telegraphed recession on record.
Yeah.
It's all we've been hearing about for the past 8-9 months is how every possible warning sign is flashing red.
And they changed the definition.
Exactly. Yes, they did change the definition.
Let's not forget that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can make the argument that, listen, the numbers in the stock market don't reflect a recession.
No.
Let's go. Well, okay, let me beg the question then. Who do those numbers reflect?
I don't think they reflect the man on the street
no,
right now.
They don't.
Who's
that's
getting
my point.
a $400 a month gas bill. That's
right.
for
It's
sure.
like people in this country who live paycheck to paycheck.
Yep. And even if you're
they're in a recession.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you're well off, even if you're making 150 or 180 grand a year, you're probably still living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
It's just you're paying for you're making payments on a Volvo or a Range Rover instead of a Chevy, and you're probably shopping at Nordstrom and Brooks Brothers instead of the Gap and Target, but you're still feeling it because everything just costs more.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's just because of that, everyone's just kind of rolled that up into definitely indications that stuff costs more, wages aren't corresponding necessarily. We're going to be in a recession just because consumers are going to be forced to lock their spending down a bit. But at the same time, what I also find interesting is that so much of this is being blamed on stimulus and free money and easy money and everything else. But the stimulus payments ran out like a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
everyone
just took them and threw them into Dogecoin.
I don't want to call up my friend Phil McIntosh from NASDAQ Trade Talks. I'm going to call my friend Phil McIntosh from NASDAQ Trade Talks. The man always says, stimulus checks, people still do stimulus checks. And I'm in the control room in the back of my mind going, what, the $1,200 from 2021 of January?
Exactly. Yeah.
Who still has that?
Right.
And he could be talking about unemployment. Right, because unemployment did happen. People did have savings.
Right.
But you look at the data now.
Even that's all run out there, hasn't the unemployment?
Well,
yeah.
See, the thing is, the mainstream is finally starting to talk about how credit card debt for young people and people in general, the consumer, is way up.
Right.
While the credit card spending is up and the debt is up.
Yep.
And the savings is down.
It's
the biggest
gone.
thing.
I mean, that's one
all
thing.
Gone.
America, I don't think, has been a nation of savers for the past 2 or 3 generations.
Well, there's a this is.
I'm sure not.
This is a crazy theory I have, which it can be torn apart by experts, definitely for sure.
I'm not an expert, so.
But it's the credit system.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea of credit, because what is credit? You're buying something you can't afford. Well, why are you buying something you can't afford? Because you can get credit for it.
Right.
If there is no credit, nothing would be affordable, which means everything would come down.
Exactly. Interesting. I think that it really is.
At least, like in basic economics 101 theory, it's probably a lot more difficult in practice.
Yeah.
But in theory, if you didn't have credit cards, people wouldn't buy what they can't afford.
Yeah.
Like I have really, really good friends in Nashville who are Republicans, and some of the smartest people I know on the planet.
Right.
And they go, listen, we have no income tax. You want to cut down on spending, you just don't buy as much. It really is that simple. Whereas up here, New York, a third of my money goes to 401k, my health insurance, taxes, and Social Security.
Yep.
New Jersey and New York tax.
Exactly. Yeah, in the same way.
I can't just buy less stuff.
Yeah.
When half my money's getting
half
stolen.
my money. Exactly. Half my money's going to to fund. I mean, it certainly isn't funding better railroads. It certainly isn't funding pothole fixing. I feel like it's just it's funding pensions and pension debt and everything else as a result of promises that were under delivered on 30 years ago.
You can't get prices to come down because these bigger companies are going to buy up all the smaller ones.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to break them up.
Exactly. But back to your point about credit for a second, because it always kind of interests me that I feel like to get your first credit card, you start going out on a limb. And then all you're doing, as you start stacking up that debt and everything else, you're just going further and further and further out on that limb, and eventually it's going to break.
Yeah.
And you can think of that both as a metaphor for individuals, but also as a metaphor for for the American consumer as a whole. And I think that you can definitely hear the bows creaking right now, and I really hope they don't break. But it could be I'm curious to see kind of what the consumer spending figures and everything look like into January, February of next year after
the CPI numbers are also Consumer Price Index. People don't know. It's also a little misleading. Right? Because it's like, you can say consumers are spending more, right? They have the money to spend. It's like, well, that's one way to read the chart. But you can also be like, well, talk about shrinkflation.
Mhm.
So a box of cereal,
Oh yeah,
it's like a 20% less in the box of cereal, but the cost is also more. So they're paying more
Mhm.
for less.
I
And
bought-
because they're paying more because the costs are higher.
exactly. I bought a thing of beef jerky the other day at the grocery store. I swear to God, it was like $7, and it was maybe an ounce.
Ugh,
It was
gross.
tiny, and
That's terrible.
I'm a big beef jerky guy.
Amazing.
You know, good wholesome snack that's better than stuffing my face full of Cool Ranch Doritos, which I've also been known to do. But I just feel like, you know, that bag of Doritos isn't necessarily getting smaller, but the packages of beef jerky certainly are. So anything that's kind of in that premium snack department, you know, premium consumer goods department, I should say, is definitely getting smaller. I mean, you look at, you know, shampoo bottles and all of that stuff is just, it's smaller but the same. Cereal box is a really good point as well. It's just, it's crazy how it's gone from, it used to be, you know, I think 16 or 18 ounces, and now it's 12, 13.